Well, hey folks, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the garage. I hope y'all are having another great day, another great weekend. I have got the Holley off the Corvette again. I've got it on the bench. Just to recap here, let me rewind a little bit. So the reason I'm taking this off is kind of twofold. So the last couple videos, we started tuning and adjusting timing and adjusting the carburetor, to get things running a little bit better, because it had been a while since I did it. And so I got everything timed and tuned where I thought it would run really well. And also, if you remember, we put in the electronic ignition in the distributor, put in some new mechanical advance springs on the weights just to help adjust that curve a little bit better. And I'll put links to those videos down in the description below if you're interested in checking those out. But after I did all that, after I got everything tuned to where I thought it was going to run well, it was. However, when I got home and went to turn the car off, the car started dieseling or running on or burning fuel that was still in the combustion chamber even after the ignition was turned off. So after doing a lot of reading and a lot of research and watching many YouTube videos, I came to the conclusion, one, that I believe the carburetor was not quite adjusted optimally, and or the timing was a little bit off. So I want to get into the carburetor, and the other reason that I took the carburetor off is because I went back and looked through my maintenance logbook, and it had been, gosh, I think maybe 7 or 8 years since I went through and refreshed and rebuilt this carburetor, with all new seals and gaskets and accelerator pump diaphragms and things like that. So that is kind of the main point of today's video. I'm going to be installing this Holley Trickit, which is basically just a carburetor service parts kit for my Holley, which is a 4779C, because it does not have vacuum secondaries. It's mechanical choke, mechanical secondary. So it is this number, and if you look on your carb, the number will be stamped on the top, on the front of the snout, or this air horn right here on the front. This is 4779 is the number on my carburetor. So I want to go ahead and just kind of walk through with you guys what I'm going to do. We're going to take a look at this parts kit here, and then just get everything put back together. I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to readjust the throttle plates on this guy. We'll get it back on the car, hopefully get it timed properly, and so we won't have any of those dieseling issues. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I've pretty much got the carburetor taken apart to the point where I want to be in order to start replacing the gaskets and seals and everything else. But just kind of want to walk you through the carburetor really quickly just to show you kind of the main components of what we got. So obviously you have your carburetor body, the main body. Now the actual throttle plate down here can be removed from the carburetor itself, and I may go ahead and do that as well, I'm going to go ahead and do that just to replace that gasket that sandwiches in between the body and the plate here. Alright, so we've got that. And then also, while I had the carburetor turned over earlier, I went ahead and adjusted the throttle plates on the primary and secondary. And let me see if I can get you a good look in here. Let's see, so your transition slot is right there, and if I open up the throttle plate a little bit, you can see that vertical slit in the side of the bore. And again, what you want is you want that throttle plate, that transition slot, to just barely be showing, so you have about a little tiny square, probably about 20 thousandths of an inch showing. Same thing with the secondary, and I don't know how well you can see that, but the transition slot is there, right about there, and that is exposed just a little bit as well. Alright, so then the next components, and what I've done here just to keep them straight, I went ahead and just put a mark on my cardboard here. P for primary and then S for secondary. So here's your primary fuel bowl and your primary metering block, and for me, I know it's the primary because it has a power valve. Here are your jets that go into the metering block. There are 2 per, and I am going to, with my can of carb cleaner, I'm going to spray out all of the little tiny orifices and slots and everything inside that metering block, just to make sure everything's cleaned out. Now, I do run ethanol-free gas, so I don't expect there to be too much gunk and buildup and you know, nasty stuff that you get with regular ethanol gas. But nonetheless, I think there's still an opportunity while I have it apart to go ahead and clean it. So this is the secondary metering block and secondary float, and of course the two jets here. This one on my particular car does not have the idle mixture screws on the secondary metering block, nor does it have a power valve. Okay, on the bottom of the float bowls you have your accelerator pumps. There is a diaphragm inside of that I'm going to change out, and then of course you have your gaskets that go on the front and rear of the metering block and the float bowl. And then inside of the float bowl you obviously have your float, and then inside the float bowl, still underneath this screw and nut, are your needle and seats. The kit does come with new needle and seats, so I'm going to replace those as well. Now, one thing I noticed here, and this may be part of my problem, so on these carburetors you have the sight plug on the side of the bowl here. That is what you use to adjust your float level of the fuel, such that when the car is running in neutral, if you have a manual car, or in gear with an automatic car, pull the sight plug out and you want that fuel to just barely trickle out. Now, secondary is about here. That looks pretty good. However, the primary is way up here, so that is definitely out of adjustment. So we're going to adjust that as well. And let's go ahead and dig into that kit and see what all comes in it. Alright, so let's take a look at this kit here. This is, again, for my Holley 4779, and this kit may work on other applications, but you can go to the Holley website, plug in your carburetor, click on maintenance, the maintenance tab or whatever it is, and it'll tell you all the different maintenance items and parts and kits or whatever they have for your carburetor. But this particular kit is 37-485 carburetor repair kit. If you need one of these, I'll have a link in the description below if you need one. I was able to pick this up off of Amazon, came to the house pretty quickly. So opening it up, of course you're going to have everything you will need to refresh and rebuild your carburetor. Alright, so right out of the bag you've got your little pack of small little washers and O-rings, I guess, in there. You have two brand new needle and seats. You have several power valves. They give you a 6.5, a 6.5, and a 10.5. Actually, I don't know why that's not an 8.5, but yeah, two 6.5s. Currently, I have in the car an 8.5, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, an 85. But I may switch it out to a 6.5 just because I don't do a lot of hard driving. You've got your little bag of clamps, C-clamps and cotter pins there. Of course, your new gaskets, new accelerator pump diaphragms, and then also the gaskets, you know, the mounting gaskets. It comes with several different kinds here. You want to just make sure that you have the right one for your application. Comes with, what is this here? It's just a spec sheet. Yep, spec sheet, as well as probably instructions. Yep, instruction sheet. Well, that gives a pretty good breakdown of the carburetor parts. So anyway, that's all that comes in this kit. I'm going to clean up the throttle plate. I'm going to clean up the main carburetor body, and then we will get started putting this all back together. Alright, the kit is installed in the carburetor and we are ready to get it back on the car, get it fired up and see how well it runs, do a little tuning. But before I do that, I just wanted to go over real quickly the settings that I made on the bench on the carburetor before I get it put back on the car. Again, I set the throttle plates to where the transition slot is barely showing, where it is just barely a little square window. When you lift up that transition slot, of course you can see the entire slot, but when you close it, you want just a little bit of that transition slot showing. Now, I have been, I think, tuning my car, you know, setting timing, setting idle, all those kinds of things, I guess the traditional way, or one way of thinking about it. What I'm going to try this time is, instead of setting the timing to a specific number, you know, 8 degrees, 10 degrees, whatever, I am going to go on the theory that all engines are different. All engines want something a little bit different in regards to timing, fuel, etc. So what I'm going to do this time around is, since I've got the carburetor set with those transition slots just barely open where I think they should be for initial setting, I'm going to go ahead and install the carburetor, get everything hooked up. I am going to set the idle with the distributor. So I'm going to set the idle based on turning the distributor to set the advance, set the timing, and see what the engine really likes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll bring you guys back in just a second. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the car started, and my little assistant is going to help me. And it's going to take just a couple turns of the motor just to get it started, because there's no fuel in the fuel bowls. So let's go ahead and get it cranked up, get it started, we'll roll it back out, and then we'll start just going through everything, letting the car warm up, and then setting the timing and looking at, you know, all the initial settings that we made on the car. You ready? Okay. So she started up just fine. It did take a little bit to get it started up, but of course you got to let the fuel pump fuel up into the bowls, up into the carburetor before it gets started. But it is actually running pretty well, and I did not have to choke the carburetor or anything like that just to get it started. I'm going to have to go to the gas station and get some gas, but let me just show you the RPMs that I'm running right now. So it's running about, oh man, cut myself. It's running about 1100 RPMs. Woo! How about that? Yeah, what do you think? Good? Yeah? How's that sound? Yeah, I know. I think once they hear the car, they'll come out and check it out. Do you? Alright guys, so I'm just going to let the car sit here and warm up a little bit, and then once it's up to operating temperature, we'll go ahead and start digging in to the carburetor, to the timing, and see how everything is set up. Alright guys, so now I feel like I've got everything dialed in kind of where I wanted. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but what I really wanted to see get rid of the dieseling. So let me go ahead and shut the car off and see if that actually works. All right, you ready? All right, let's turn it off. It still had a little bit of dieseling in there. So I think, what do you want to try? Yeah. Maybe we should try turning the idle down just a little bit. It was running pretty well, but I think there's a combination there we can play with, you know, with the timing, the initial timing, as well as, there you go, as well as the actual idle adjustment screw. So I'm going to mess around with that for just a little bit. It actually wasn't dieseling as bad as it was last weekend when we messed with it. And it seemed to be running pretty well, as you saw there from the clips of the vacuum gauge. Kind of got everything dialed in there. I feel like that was pretty good. So what I did with the car, with timing, with the carburetor, was I was adjusting the timing to kind of optimize vacuum, and then also dialing back the idle screw, the idle setting screw on the carburetor, to try and get it dialed in to where, you know, hopefully it would not idle. Hopefully it would not diesel when I turned the car off, which I did not fix that problem. I'll continue to work on that probably in the next video or so. So I did dial back the timing, or I put more timing in, I guess I should say. I ended up at about, I think it was 13 degrees advanced timing, and then my idle was set right around 800, 750 or so, and I was getting vacuum readings of about, what was it, maybe 12 to 15, give or take, in that range. So pretty close I feel. I did take the car out for a test drive, and it was a lot snappier. First gear right off idle was a lot snappier than it has been, so I'm pretty excited about that. Still not happy with where I am on the shut-off sequence, where the car still diesels and runs on after the ignition is closed. So I think maybe what I'm going to try next is just adding maybe a degree or two more of timing in there, and then dialing back or adjusting the throttle, or the idle screw when I get my timing to where I need it to be. So it's really a balancing act. The other thing I did, or the other things I did, were I adjusted the idle mixture screws with my vacuum gauge. I had the vacuum gauge hooked up to full manifold vacuum, not ported vacuum. I had the vacuum gauge hooked up to full manifold, and then I just adjusted the idle mixture screws. I think I ended up turning them in about a half a turn a piece to get to optimal, or the highest vacuum reading I could. And then what I also did, very new to me, this is the first time I've ever tried this. I tried a bottle, well actually about a half a bottle of seafoam in the car. So I had my neighbor help me out hitting the throttle just to keep the throttle open so that wouldn't kill the engine. And I poured about half of the bottle down the primary jets, or the primary throttle side, alternating from the passenger to the driver's side intakes, because on my car it's a dual plane intake, so I wanted to make sure I got both banks. And so I poured about a half bottle down, just ever so slightly, a little bit at a time, so it wouldn't die out. And then once I got down to about half a bottle, I just went ahead and kind of saturated it, and then just let the motor die out on its own. Let it heat soak for about 10 minutes, and then fired it back up. And of course I had the infamous white seafoam smoke coming out of the car, out of the tailpipes, and then took it for a pretty hard drive for, you know, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes or so. That was about it. I topped her off with some 89 octane ethanol free fuel, and went and got some sushi, called it a night. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. I don't know if there was much in this video that was helpful to you. Maybe there was. I hope there was. If there was, let me know down in the comments section below. Also, be sure to leave a like, leave a thumbs up. It also helps with that YouTube algorithm. And if you hadn't done so already, guys, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I plan to do maybe 1, 2, 3, who knows how many more videos with this Corvette. Again, my 1970 Corvette. Let me know down in the comments section if you guys are enjoying these videos with the Corvette. As I mentioned, I do plan to do maybe 1 or 2 more Corvette specific videos talking about the idle and the mixtures and the timing and these kinds of things to try and figure out my dieseling problem. But with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the video. As always, I appreciate your support. Thank you for stopping by the channel, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.